Hello and welcome to AR on AR. My name's Adam Rose, that's where you get the AR from. Anyway, today what we're going to look at is the basic gear you'd need to participate in an adventure race. A lot of people are intimidated by adventure racing. They hear that you need a huge amount of equipment to take part. But what I'm telling you is that for your basic adventure race, your short adventure race, what we call a sprint event, you might not need to buy too much. Okay, and a sprint race we would define as anything from, let's say, 3-4 hours up to even 36 hours. So it's quite a big gap, but I'll show you what you'd need just to get started. So first of all, here's a pair of shoes, a pair of trainers, right? You can see they've got pretty good grip. Doesn't matter what brand, but the point is you want something like this and not a pair of smooth, slick road running shoes, because adventure racing is off-road for the most part, so you need something proper like that. You'll need a helmet. Why? Because you'll be mountain biking more than likely. You might also be using ropes, doing some abseiling, you might be kayaking, whitewater rafting, and for a lot of those disciplines, you'll be needing a helmet as well. And then thirdly, to carry all your stuff, you need a backpack of some kind. Now this is a fairly basic one. You can see I've got a CamelBak here to supply water, but it doesn't have to be too big, doesn't have to be too expensive. I've had this one since 2009, it's now 2020, so it's obviously doing the job. The fourth part of the puzzle is a bike, because in most adventure races you'll probably be doing some mountain biking. So this is my beast. It's a carbon hardtail, and you don't need to invest in something quite that expensive. It's not the top of the range by any means, but you need a bike, and you could start off with an old clunker really if it's a first race. You could even go to the organizers of the race beforehand and say you want to hire a bike, so you just turn up with the gear that I've got on the table here, hire a bike from a local bike shop, and off you go. So really there's not a lot of equipment invested at the beginning before you decide whether you're going to be hooked or not. Now just to show you what's inside a pack, what you might typically be needing to carry as you go. In the pockets that I've got in this pack, I've got some food, some typical bars or raisins, chocolate, or anything that gives you energy. And then inside the pack, I'll go through a few of the items. First of all, adventure racing is all about navigation. So here I've got a map. It's got checkpoints printed on the map for me, so I know where to go. And in a short race, you're likely just to get a single map. In longer events, you might be issued with more than one, so 10, 20, even 30 maps in a single event. Because you're navigating, you'll need a compass. Now this is a base plate compass, fairly basic. It's what most people use. There are other forms of compasses, but you can get these pretty cheap. You're probably going to need to carry a whistle. And the reason they ask you to do this is because if you get into any sort of problems, emergencies, it's much easier to call somebody using a whistle than to use your voice. Your voice gets hoarse after all. A torch. Again, this is a pretty basic one. A lot of the short events don't even have you doing any night stages. So for a typical 5-6 hour race in the middle of the day, you're not going to need to carry a torch. But if you do, there's a million to choose from. Here we have an emergency blanket or bivy bag. A lot of races require you to carry these just in case something goes wrong again, you get injured, you need to keep warm. This you can just wrap around yourself and it'll do the job. Most of them are made of foil or maybe plastic. Now, when you buy a backpack or bring your backpack to the race, don't think of getting a waterproof pack. Nobody uses them, and even if they claim to be waterproof, water will find its way in. So much better than carrying a waterproof pack is to carry waterproof dry bags into which you put all the gear that you need to keep dry. So this is a fairly standard looking one. It's got a window which makes it easier for me to see what's inside. And typically you'll be carrying a warm layer of some kind. Even if the weather's great outside, you want to carry a warm layer, again, just in case emergencies arise. And then another piece of essential kit, some form of waterproof jacket. Okay, again, no matter what the weather's like right now. Now this is fairly standard, it doesn't matter what brand really, but most races will require you to have a waterproof jacket that has a hood integrated, and usually they require you to have taped seams on the jacket itself. Here we have a first aid kit, pretty basic one. It's got some anti-blister stuff, it's got plasters, triangular bandage, sunscreen, maybe some antihistamine in case I'm bitten by a bug or something, but fairly straightforward. We can look at that in detail later on. And a buff, that's what most people call these things. Put on your head, can become some sort of headgear. Put on your wrist, put it around your neck to keep your neck warm. Yeah, you could use it to wipe the sweat out of your eyes. But these things are so popular, a lot of races give them to you as part of the kind of goodie bag, especially for the longer events. If the event features any form of water discipline, the organizers will usually supply paddles, in this case a fairly basic fiberglass paddle here, and some sort of protection, buoyancy aid, and obviously the kayaks and the canoes that are involved in the race itself, or inflatable rafts, whatever they might have. As you get on in racing, as you become more serious about it, you might want to buy a better PFD, and you might invest in carbon paddles because they're much lighter, much less tiring, especially if you're doing a long paddle stage. And then lastly, one piece of essential kit that I find most racers benefit from. You fill this up with whatever your local poison is, and you should see my teammates' faces when I bring this out in the middle of the night. It's cold, it's wet, we're miserable. Bring this out, they fight me to get hold of this. Okay, so hopefully this has been useful. There's, yes, an endless amount of kit you could invest in, but just to get started in racing, just to dip your toes in the water, just grab those few basic things I mentioned at the beginning, give it a try, and I'm pretty sure you will be hooked. Thanks very much. See you next time.